AliExpress, I flipping love it. It used to be all about cheap, pretty basic bike parts, but that's kind of changing. Very niche, boutique level, lightweight upgrades are now showing up on there pretty regularly. So today I'll show you some of the best stuff that I found, from bits that cost just a few quid, all the way through to some genuinely exotic carbon fiber gear. My name, as always, is Luke, and yeah, welcome back to Trace Velo. Quick disclaimer, I found all this gear myself because I'm on AliExpress for hours every day. And yeah, I've paid for it with my own cash as well. So let's crack on. Right then, all of today's upgrades have gone on this bike here behind me. It's my daily driver. I've had it for years, and I'll show you the final weight at the end actually, because I'm really happy with it. But we're gonna start with the cheapest of the upgrades, and hear me out on this one: lightweight bar tape. To put things in perspective, this cork bar tape from Trek with a bit of gel backing, pretty standard stuff, weighs 135 grams for both rolls. The bar tape in this box, less than half of that. Now, admittedly, it is half of the thickness, but I've been running it for a couple of weeks and it's totally fine, especially if you wear cycle gloves like I do. It's durable, nice and grippy, goes on well, comes with two different types of bar end plug. I'm obviously running the ultralight 3D printed ones, and the finishing tape, which is normally utter rubbish with cheaper bar tape and kind of looks like this. The stuff included here is surprisingly decent. It sticks really well, it's rubbery with a bit of stretch, and importantly, for both rolls, the weight comes to just 50 grams. I paid 9 quid, but it's going for 7 quid. At the moment, a super cheap, super easy upgrade. And obviously, depending on what bar tape you're currently running, you can drop close to 100 grams with this stuff, which for such a cheap upgrade, I think is really decent. Right then, moving up about 2 quid in cost, you can get these, and again, might sound a bit silly, but lightweight flat mount adapters. I'm currently running 160mm disc rotors front and back, so I need adapters for both calipers. You can see I was running the pretty standard black aluminium ones I'm sure you're all familiar with, and on the scales, they come to 23 grams for the pair, so not exactly monstrous. But you can see these cool looking purple ones, they're milled out, kind of skeletonized, and the weight on these, 10 grams for both. Now, I know a 13 gram weight saving might sort of seem pretty pointless in the grand scheme of things, but it's only a tenner for both. I think it's quite a cool little upgrade, just add a bit of personality to the bike. They're obviously super easy to fit, and you can get them in a bunch of different colors to match your gear. Now, there are actually some titanium alloy versions of these kind of floating around AliExpress, but they're so much more expensive, 45 quid for both, and at best, you'll save maybe another 2 or 3 grams. Now, I'll show you these nice lightweight disc rotors in a second because they are really good, but they're 6-bolt, and most decent road wheel sets use a center lock interface, so I run adapters. But pairing these nice lightweight rotors with a chunky adapter, it defeats the point, so check these out. This is a regular 6-bolt adapter. It works well, and I've used this one quite a lot actually. Plus, it's nice and cheap, about 6 quid each on AliExpress, but it is quite chunky and uses steel pegs to hold the disc in place. Weight-wise, it comes out to 31 grams. That's where this one comes in. It's made out of aluminium, nicely milled out and kind of skeletonized, and importantly, it comes out to just 16 grams each. So over both wheels, that's a 30 gram weight saving. Not to be sniffed at if you ask me. I got a pair of adapters for 14 quid, so it's not going to break the bank. They come in some funky colors, and again, it's a super straightforward upgrade. I will say they didn't actually come with those little metal discs you often see on the back of these lock nuts. I've since added them from a spare set of adapters I had, but when I first did them up, those little ridges on the back side, they did scrape a tiny bit of carbon off the surface of my rotors. Won't be a problem for everybody, but yeah, worth noting. Right, so this next one might not spring to mind first when you're looking to drop some weight from the bike, but tyre choice can make a huge difference. I'll do a much more comprehensive episode on Chinese tyres soon because I've been testing loads and I found some genuinely impressive ones. But for the purposes of this episode, check these out. RS600 tyres from this brand called Vook.
I believe they're rebranded tyres from this company Velo, which is a Chinese manufacturer that have been making tyres for over 20 years at this point, I think. They're standard clinchers with a 330 TPI casing, which, yeah, is actually up there with some of the best tyres on the market. They feel supple and fast, they've got decent puncture protection, they're nice and grippy, and they weigh just over 220 grams each, which, yeah, if you know, is very light. The kind of crazy bit though, I got a pair, so 2 tyres, for 33 quid delivered. Mental value for money. At that sort of price, you're normally looking at something more entry level, like the Conti Ultra Sport 3s, which they're decent tyres, but they're heavier, weighing close to 300 grams each. So just by swapping tyres, you could drop close to 150 grams. Much more actually if you're running something like Gator Skins or a set of these cheap Schwalbe Logano tyres.
Plus, unlike dropping a few grams with a brake adapter, this is rotating mass right out of the edge of the wheel, arguably one of the most noticeable places to do that on a bike. Dropping weight here will help you accelerate faster. Now, I'm not claiming these are going to compete directly with like GP5000s, although on paper, they are a very similar spec actually, and in fact, these do come out a little bit lighter. But after riding them for a while, I have been genuinely impressed with them. I mean, I would say if you're in the market for some new tyres and you've got 30 quid to spare, I highly recommend giving these a punt. Over the years, I have tried so many different lightweight disc rotors from AliExpress. All of them have used a 6-bolt interface actually, hence the adapters that I showed earlier. But on balance, I think these are my favorite. Now, they're not identical, although they are very similar in design to these ultra boutique disc rotors that some of you might be familiar with from Carbon TI. However, they're 160 quid each. These are just 20.
A decent steel brake track, internal carbon spider, and steel rivets, which is a bonus. Sometimes these are aluminium, which aren't the strongest and can cause issues in my experience. Now, weight-wise, we're looking at 89 grams each for a 160mm rotor. There are lighter discs out there. For example, these ones I've used in the past, they're pretty good and come in at 73 grams, but the brake track on these is much less substantial. This means it heats up quicker and you reach brake fade-on descents much faster. These ones with the carbon spider prioritize having a bit more weight, a bit more steel in the brake track, so I found the bite to be more consistent. Now, in terms of weight saving, pair these with the lightweight adapters from earlier. That's just 105 grams each. As a point of comparison, these Shimano Ice Tech rotors are 130 grams. So over both rotors, that's 50 grams. Again, much more if you're running basic rotors like these ones. That could be over 200 grams off the bike.
Now, I bought these rotors nearly a year ago at this point actually, and I think they might have sold out, but I did find basically identical ones from 2 other brands called Racework or TT Pro. So I'll link all those down below as well. Right, now we're getting into the kind of ridiculous stuff. This saddle, right? So fully carbon shell, carbon rails, everything. There's no padding, so the construction is pretty minimal to sort of say the least. And the weight is just 53 grams.
Again, to put things in perspective, this Specialized Power Comp saddle comes in at 250 grams, the S-Works Carbon version, about 160 grams, and a Fizik Antares 00, which is already considered a very light premium saddle. Apparently the lightest in the range is around 124 grams. This thing is 53 in the hand. It feels ridiculous, and I'll be honest, I bought it fully expecting it to break actually. I've tried super lightweight saddles from AliExpress before, and in general they haven't lasted very long. However, I've ridden this thing now for over 500 kilometers. It's been rock solid. In fact, you can see I've kind of polished the back of it because I've been riding it so much. Yet no issues at all.
In terms of comfort, I'll say it's not as bad as it might look, right? So there is some flex in the saddle. Most of my rides are about 2 hours long, and for that, it's not a problem. But a few weeks back, I did London to Brighton with a friend of mine, and I was in the saddle for just over 4 hours. I think that's probably the limit for me, to be honest with you. So for day-to-day riding, not a problem, but for back-to-back long-distance days in the saddle, maybe not so much. But it's not perfect, right? So the rider weight limit is 85 kilograms, so it's not really intended for everybody. And on the train ride back from Brighton, I noticed this. So the carbon saddle rails aren't kind of perfect. There are a few voids and rough patches on there, which, if I'm honest, isn't super confidence inspiring.
Having said that though, I think 500k is a pretty decent durability test, and like I've said, it's been perfect. Plus, I've actually tested another nearly identical version. It's this one from a brand called PLSELIS. I'm not sure how you say that. The construction, though, is the same. It just doesn't have those holes in the wings, and it weighs a tiny bit more at 60 grams. I bought this way back in November last year, and again, about 500k on it, no issues either. Now, I'm going to keep the 53-gram one on the bike, but if I was to recommend one, it'd probably be this one. It just feels much more solid. The finish is better. There are no voids in the saddle rails, and it happens to be way cheaper. This 53-gram one was 84 quid. This one is about half that at 44.
However, one quick thing to mention, the listing for this saddle claims that the rails are the standard oval profile for carbon rails of 7x9, but I measured them, they're 6.5 by 8.5, so ever so slightly smaller. Should be fine for most people, but do double check that your saddle clamp will accommodate that slightly smaller size. All right, we'll finish on probably the most ridiculous upgrade that I've kind of come across. Legitimate carbon thru axles. Now, a few years ago, if you wanted a set, there was one brand which probably sprang to mind for most people, Overfast. Now, Joe over at Panda Podium uses them. He really likes them. They've got a great reputation. They're beautifully made and they're ridiculously light, but still very much a kind of niche boutique product.
So when I saw these floating around AliExpress, I had to pick them up. The cool thing about this though, it kind of comes as a kit, and this is the killer feature. Road bikes use a few different thru axle standards, slightly different lengths, thread pitches, and shoulder profiles. But instead of buying a different axle for every bike, you can just swap these little heads over. You get this nice little ratchet, a super long Torx bit, and these screws. So if you put the Torx bit down the hollow thru axle, you can undo the screw at the end and change out the head. Genius.
Now, I'll be honest with you, when I first opened them up, they looked okay, but upon closer inspection, there were a few rough patches.
You can see at this end, if I pull off this rubber cap, they've glued in a hexagonal steel insert, so you can kind of tighten or loosen it. But there are some quite prominent gaps around that insert. Plus, at the other end, if I loosen the screw and remove the aluminium head, the carbon looks almost pitted. Hopefully that's coming across. But despite all of that, I've now ridden them again for around 500-600 kilometers. They've been absolutely faultless. I fiddle about with my bike a lot as well, so I've removed them and retorqued them probably close to 50 times. No creaks, no movement, no issues. Now, interestingly, when I bought them, they had this report from a third-party testing agency called SGS mentioned on the listing, and I also pulled these report pages from the DFS website. Essentially, the results appear to be beyond anything you'd probably ever see in normal use. However, in classic AliExpress fashion, mention of that report has now been removed from the listing and the DFS website, and after a bit of digging, it looks like that report actually relates to these thru axles, which are very similar but are from a different brand called IMTOS. In fact, it looks like DFS have even used some of the product images from that brand IMTOS and just removed or changed the logo. Now, if I was to speculate, and I could be wrong, I reckon these thru axles both come from the same supplier, but this brand DFS just didn't pay for the testing. That would be my guess anyway.
So in essence, despite the slightly anemic looking screw, I don't think the head's, that threaded end is gonna snap off. But well, every time I tighten them up or loosen them for that matter, I do worry about that hex insert glued in. I worry it's gonna either round out or maybe kind of break free and spin within the thru axle. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but if I were a gambling man, I'll say that's probably how they're gonna fail.
In fact, after looking back through my footage from the Shanghai Bike Show earlier this year, Farsports had a very similar looking kit on their booth. Again, that could be because they come from a similar supplier, although I will say these ones do have a slightly different design. They have a sort of flat profile along the middle of the axle. It also seems slightly more refined. I couldn't see any pitting on the carbon, for example. I mean, that could be because it's been cherry-picked for the show. They knew thousands of people would be looking at it, so that's within the realms of possibility. Anyway, maybe I'll get in touch, see if Farsports will send me a set so I can make a direct comparison. But regardless, what is the weight? So the aluminium axles I took off this bike were already pretty light, 66 grams, but these carbon ones, just mental, 25 grams for the pair. Now, cost-wise, I got them for 145 quid with a little coupon, which isn't actually that much cheaper than the Overfast ones that I mentioned earlier, but they are ever so slightly lighter, and with all the different heads, they're basically universal as well.
So no, these carbon thru axles aren't like a massive bargain. They're not even that cheap, to be honest with you, but I still find them fascinating, right? Because a few years ago, if you wanted a super niche product like this, this, you would have to go to a boutique supplier and pay a bit of a premium, but now they're showing up on AliExpress. Of all places. It's like I said at the beginning, the tech is starting to trickle down, and along with that, presumably, the prices are gonna drop with it. So all of those upgrades are on this bike right now. I've been using them, they work great, love them. But because I'm a massive loser, I've done a couple of other little lightweight mods on here that are just super nerdy, but I'm gonna take you through them because I think they're pretty cool. So firstly, I replaced the rear derailleur on this bike. So the group set I'm running is the R9 disc. It's an 11-speed mechanical group set from L2. And if I show you, this is the original rear derailleur that came with it. I used it for thousands and thousands of miles. That comes out to 261 grams. This one here is actually from the group set up, the L2 12-speed RX group set. I had it lying around from a previous review, and even though it's kind of one extra speed, the cable pull ratios appear to be the same. Regardless, the shifting has been absolutely flawless on here for the last few months I've had it on. It's got a carbon pulley cage and a few other changes. It's 220 grams, so that's 41 grams off the bike. Secondly, again, because I had this 12-speed RX group set, I replaced the brake levers. So the stock brake levers on this 11-speed group set were aluminium. I weighed them, they were 47 grams each. These carbon ones here from the 12-speed RX group set, they were a drop-in replacement. They're 20 grams each. So across both shifters, that's a 54 gram weight saving. Next up, I actually replaced the brake calipers on this bike. So yeah, these are the stock ones that came with the L2 R9 group set. And again, I used these for thousands of miles, 142 grams each, right? So let me show you. On here, I replaced them with these black calipers. And I've got these green ones, which are identical apart from the color, so I can show you the weight. So 142 grams a piece. These ones, 96 grams. So you can imagine across two brake calipers, that's quite a big saving. And lastly, I swapped out the chain for a 12-speed one. So I'll show you, it's quite fancy looking. It's from this brand SUMC that I'm quite familiar with. It's a 12-speed Shimano specific flat top chain. And hopefully you can see it's got hollow pins and hollow plates there. So it saves about 10, 15 grams off the bike. The color matches my kind of purple color scheme, and the shifting is absolutely flawless. So yeah, win-win. Now to give you some idea, last year before any of these upgrades went on the bike, its weight came out to 7.6, well, just over 7.6 kilos, which is already pretty light, to be honest, for a bike like this, which is a large 58 centimeter frame. But let's get it on the scales now, and I'll show you what this thing weighs. So let's get these scales turned on there. And yeah, this thing is absolutely ready to ride, right? Bottle cage, both pedals on there, computer mount on the front. So let's get this put on the scales. 7.035 kilos, a hair over 7 kg. In fact, if you were to weigh it without pedals and bottle cages, like the majority of bikes these days, it'd come out to just over 6.8 kilos, which for arguably a pretty budget-oriented build is just mental. In fact, I kind of sense checked myself on the price quickly here, and I think it comes out to about 2,200 quid, maybe 2,300 with a bit more wiggle room. But either way, I'm incredibly happy with a bike of this weight for that price.
It's the bonus clip time.
Right, some of you might be aware, I haven't posted anything in over a month, and here's the reason. So this is my it's a new little girl, new addition to the family. She's about 4 weeks old, and yeah, you might be able to tell I didn't get much sleep last night. It was incredibly rough, so kind of running on fumes at the moment. I've got another little girl, she's nearly 3 now, so I'm a certified girl dad, and yeah, honestly, I'm absolutely made up. I'm so chuffed. And mum, my wife, she's what a superstar. She's incredible, and she is recovering really well. So we're back in the trenches with a newborn, hence the reason I've been a bit busy. But anyway, apart from this new addition, I've got another new addition for the garage in that box back there. So give me a second. The carbon crankset that I'm running on this bike, I've done a video on it already actually. I got it on AliExpress for about 150 quid, and admittedly, the chain rings that came supplied with it were a little bit rubbish, so I did have to swap those out. But since doing that, I've been running it the last couple of months. It's been absolutely flawless. But in that box, I got this. How cool does that look? So it's another carbon crankset from this brand Aerowork that I'm not super familiar with. It's got a carbon carrier, carbon spider, and then carbon chain rings at 5034 from this presumably sister company Aerolab. But yeah, it looks really slick. Now this one is about 530 grams there or thereabouts, whereas this one here, 510, well, 511. So yeah, again, a little bit more weight off the bike, and I think it looks a little bit nicer with these carbon chain rings as well. And in fact, I also have some aero chain rings in here, and also a variant with a titanium axle, because this is an aluminium dub variety. But yeah, review on this coming very soon, because yeah, it looks pretty nice, doesn't it? And secondly, the gear in this box got delivered a couple of days ago, and I'm incredibly excited to try it. So as mentioned, this is the L2R9 disc group set. I bought this about 2 years ago, but in this box here, I've got the latest generation. Was released, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and it looks very different actually, and there's a reason for that. So this older generation uses a kind of campag style shifting. So you got a shift paddle here, and then you kind of shift with this thumb trigger as well. On this one, it copies basically the Shimano standard of shifting. So the whole brake lever swings like that, and then you've got a shift paddle underneath like so. So a completely different way of shifting, and I'm incredibly excited to try this out. In fact, as well as that, I've got loads of other stuff in these boxes here behind me, including another electronic group set from China, which looks very, very interesting. I've got another gravel bike on the way and loads of other gear as well. So yeah, get subscribed. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm gonna go and get these two little girls into bed, and hopefully I'll get a bit more sleep this evening, but who knows. Right, anyway, see you next time. Ciao, ciao.